Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Push with Nick and KP. We are back once again to record a reactions video. This time we are doing the PLE, which is NXT Deadline. It took place last night on December 6th, 2025, in San Antonio, Texas. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the first match, which was a very first time, which was the ruler Obafemi going up against Ricky Saints for the NXT Championship. A short 70 days ago, Ricky won this title from Obafemi at NXT No Mercy. However, this time the roles were reversed. Obafemi is no longer the champion, and all the pressure is on Ricky Saints. During the predictions, we both were of the opinion that Oba winning wouldn't be shocking, but that we both kind of made the decision that it made more sense for Ricky to retain here to further cement this reign. Obviously, that did not happen. KP, thoughts on this one? And did the right person win?
Well, surprised on a couple of counts here. First and foremost, the fact that this was the first time in NXT history that we did have the men's championship kick off the show. You think through all the takeovers and everything in the past that maybe at one point this would have happened prior to this, but yeah, the first time happening, first time for everything. But yeah, a decent way to kick things off here, and it was a surprising victory. Yeah, I mean, you basically just summarized exactly what I was going to say. It just made a lot more sense in my eyes for Obafemi to lose and go up to the main roster at some point sooner or later. So yeah, now we're sort of back to where we were a couple of months ago, and we now have the ruler once again at the top, ruling over NXT. So very interesting in that sense. And the match itself was pretty good, to be fair. It wasn't a bad way to kick off the show by any means necessary. I quite like the sort of back and forth between the two men. I thought, especially Ricky Saints was very, very strong in this contest. I thought he actually, controlled a lot of the tempo here. Was pretty much on top for a large part of it and had Oba, fighting from underneath for a large part of this one. So it's probably the most dominant performance, against Obafemi that I've seen in a while. So yeah, it was quite interesting in that one, but obviously it didn't work out in the end for him. We do see eventually a second fall from grace from Obafemi, which would allow him to get the victory here. But this had come after previously Ricky Saints hits a tornado DDT onto the steel steps on the outside before then hitting another one in the ring immediately afterwards. Ricky would go for a cover, but Oba would kick out at 2, and that would be when he hits his first fall from grace literally moments later after that. So it was quite a surprise, really. That pinfall I thought could have done it. We saw just the one of those moves hit on Obafemi last time, and that'll be enough for Ricky Saints to win the NXT title. So for to have hit 2 back to back essentially, and one being on the steel steps is crazy. It's like Obafemi has come back with an absolute, purpose, and yeah, that was a crazy kick out for sure. But yeah, a little bit of a shocking result. Yeah, definitely surprised by it, but I liked how the match flowed. I thought it worked pretty well. Ricky looked strong despite losing, and Obafemi, he got the win, so naturally he's going to look pretty good by doing so as well. Obafemi now has a date with Cody Rhodes at Saturday night's main event. We learned that on SmackDown. So that's going to be quite interesting to see that match take place next week on the final night of John Cena's illustrious career. But yeah, Cody against Oba is quite interesting. The ruler is back on top of NXT, and Ricky Saints as to what next for him, I'm not too sure. We saw him a bit dejected later on in the evening. So yeah, I'm intrigued to see where we go from here. But once again, Obafemi, the NXT champion, not bad at all. I gave the matchup an 8 out of 10 to get things started. I thought it was a pretty solid start to the show. Nothing really went wrong in here. I wouldn't say it was anything truly spectacular, but it was a good, strong, starting matchup. So that's not a bad way to get things going. Nick, what did you make of this one in terms of the shock value, the result, how the match went down, and just generally speaking, just how you thought it went, and your sort of vibe as a opening contest here for NXT Deadline.
Yeah, a bit shocking, and then we kind of mentioned that we both kind of thought it wouldn't be, super surprising, but shocking in the fact that I think more could have came from this had they just let Saints win, kind of further cement his reign here. Obviously, only 70 days into it, not very long in the grand scheme of things, and comparatively speaking to other champions. But you brought up a good point. Saints did look good here. The crowd was pretty split between the two. I would say probably slightly in the favor of Oba, but yeah, in the end, just a ruler reminding us of why they call him exactly that, our new NXT champion for the second time, Obafemi. It's crazy. It's only been 2 reigns because it feels like he's been champion for such a large part of his NXT career. But yeah, and you alluded to as well, getting to face Cody Rhodes next week at Saturday Night Main Event. Really looking forward to that contest. But yeah, for this one, it was a good kind of kickoff match. Surprise factor, get the crowd involved. I too gave this one an 8 out of 10. Probably one of the better Ricky Saints matches. I know I've said it several times, but didn't feel like he quite had I hadn't really made his reigns feel special quite yet, and maybe he'll get another opportunity to do so. At the end of the day, I think this probably the best part of his reign was the last match, unfortunately. But sometimes that's how it goes. With that, let's go ahead and get into the second match of the evening, which was, of course, the Women's Iron Survivor Challenge. This time featuring Kelani Jordynne, Kendal Grey, Jordynne Grace, Lola Vice, and Sol Ruca. I had high hopes for this one. KP did not end up main eventing, so I got the order wrong on that one. But KP, what did you make of this one in terms of deadline matches overall, comparatively speaking, prior years, at least on the women's side? And what did you think of I would call it a surprise victory here for Kendal Grey? What did you make of it all?
Absolutely brilliant. What a fantastic matchup this was. I thought every single woman out there absolutely killed it. There's just a whole lot of positive to take from this one. It was a really, really, really fun watch for me personally. Obviously, I could shout out the obvious things here. Kendal Grey, what a moment for her this is. I think she is probably my least sort of believable option here to win this matchup. Not because I don't think she's good, but just because she's the Evolved Women's Champion. The four other women in this matchup have a much longer tenure in NXT, and to think that nobody in this matchup has actually won the NXT Women's Championship, considering how stacked those four women really are with their tenure of NXT, it is quite crazy to think about. So I thought maybe one of them was going to get that opportunity, that push to get to that position. But am I disappointed with Kendal Grey winning? Absolutely not, because this girl is the real deal. She's absolutely special. She's fantastic. She's kind of like almost like a female Kurt Angle, I guess you could say, really. Just the way that she sort of takes into the ring, her grappling ability, just general wrestling, she's technically sound. She's gifted, smooth as butter. And yeah, she was always just in the right place at the right time. And I saw some smarts from her during the match as well, which I'll break down a little bit in a minute as well. But like outside of Kendal Grey for a moment here, I thought that everyone just worked really, really well with each other. There were so many spots throughout the contest. Everyone had a great showing. No one really had like a moment where they were sort of like out of the equation and for too long was sort of like missing from the action. And yeah, I just think that, Kelani Jordynne Grace, especially, as well as Kendal Grey, they both had a really, really strong showing in this matchup as well. Evolved them so much throughout the contest. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. Drama until the very last few seconds. Let's break down how everything took place from start to finish here. This could be a quick little synopsis here. I'm going to try and rush through it. So basically, how things will start, we'd have Kendal Grey and Kelani Jordynne kicking things off. Kendal would pin Kelani with a power slam just before entrant number 3 arrives, literally as the countdown's going down. We then see Jordynne Grace enter the matchup with a score 1-0 to Kendal Grey at this point. Kelani Jordynne pins Kendal Grey with a roll-up, and then we see Lola Vice enter, which then brings her in as the 4th competitor. Within 30 seconds or so, she hits a spinning back fist on Kendal Grey, and that gets her a pin. We see Kendal Grey pinning Jordynne Grace with a unique roll-up. Jordynne Grace replies moments later with a pin on Kelani Jordynne with another roll-up. A whole lot of roll-ups here. Sol Ruca, she tries to get into the ring at the 5th entrance here. And as she's trying to get in, Kelani Jordynne pulls her down from the apron, causing her to get her knee injured again, or re-hurt, whatever. And Sol actually gets escorted to the back by medics. We see Sol Ruca come down, a few minutes later. She hits a double soul snatcher into both Kelani Jordynne and Lola Vice and pins them both respectively, getting 2 pins, immediately there. Kelani pins Jordynne Grace after Kendal Grey hits the Shades of Grey, and Kelani hits a frog splash into both women in order to get that pinfall. Grace hits a spinning bomb on Kelani to get a pin for herself, and then Lola Vice hits a spinning kick to Kendal to get a pin. So at this point, every single woman has 2 pins each. So there's just a quick sort of catch-up checkpoint here. So with Jordynne Grace, Kelani Jordynne, and Ruca on the outside, Kendal Grey hits a diving Shades of Grey, and that'll be enough to get her third pinfall and the win in this matchup, literally as the match was just coming to a close. The time was going down to the last few seconds. So yeah, that's just a quick little A, B, C, D throughout the whole thing there. But yeah, it was brilliant. Absolutely phenomenal stuff. I really do enjoy these Deadline Iron Survivor Challenge matches. They're just so much fun. There's so much going on. There's drama until the very last second. And this one had everything. It had literally all of that description and probably a bit more as well. So yeah, fantastic moment for Kendal Grey, especially. She now has a chance to go one-on-one with the NXT Women's Champion, JC Jane. Whether she can beat JC, obviously that's another question. But for now, what a great performance, what a great match, and yeah, some really, really good stuff from this one. I gave it a 9 out of 10, absolutely solid. One of my favourite Iron Survivor challenges, I think, in recent memory, for sure. But yeah, definitely up there with one of the better matches, for sure, of this match type. What did you make of this one, Nick? I know you're not tremendously sold on these normally, but yeah, what was your general vibe for this one? Your thoughts on Kendal Grey winning, going straight up to JC Jane, and yeah, you look at the other four women, you think, when will their time come?
Yeah, a great question, and continues to be the question I have for Jordynne Grace. I know we both kind of felt like maybe this was the right choice for her. But getting into what actually happened, yeah, I think we both had high hopes for Gray, thinking that she could make a big name for herself, but neither of us kind of even entertained the idea that she could end up winning. And so the fact, that she did, starting off the night with two surprise finishes, I guess you could say. But yeah, she not only made a big name for herself, but to win the match itself over these four other women who are all very deserving in their own right. I love this decision for WWE. Sometimes, I think if you do it too much, it's not surprising. But if you do it every once in a while, a surprise finish like this can be really effective. And I think you are the Evolve watcher, but anytime Kendal Grey has been on NXT, she's got my attention. I think we both kind of raved about her pretty equally on these podcasts, and this is no exception. I think she has a ton of potential, and yeah. As for the other women in this match, obviously there were four others. Not a single one I think looked weak here. Sometimes that's kind of a double-edged sword, in that not nobody looked weak, but also no one stood out. I feel like for the most part that does hold true, that no one looked weak. But I feel like the two big standouts here, at least for me, obviously Kendal Grey winning, I think has to be a standout. But then Kelani Jordynne as well. Like, she looked like an absolute menace during this match. Obviously with the bit during Sol Ruca as soon as she came in, and then her continued beef with Jordynne Grace. We see kind of the fallout from that later on in the evening as well. I would have to agree. This is probably the best Deadline match, as you kind of alluded to. I'm not the biggest fan of them, but this was probably the best one I've seen. 11 pinfalls in total, absolute carnage. Had no idea who was going to win. Everyone made a good case, but in the end, Kendal Grey here, and I love that decision for her and WWE and NXT specifically. But yeah, give us one a 9 out of 10 as well. Both on the same page there, and there's a ratings department so far. But yeah, ton of fun, and get a bit more into, kind of comparatively speaking, the two Deadline matches here in just a bit. But let's go ahead and get into the next match, which has Mr. Iguana going up against Ethan Page for that NXT North American Championship. I think I had pretty high hopes for this one, and for me, it didn't quite live up to it. It was a fun contest, but didn't quite live up to the high expectations I had for it. Maybe that's just a me issue. But KP, how did you receive this one? What was your rating on this?
I think this served perfectly for the particular purpose that it was put on the card for. I think you look at the rest of the matches across the card and you think, there's some very serious things going on. I think this one being in the, smack bang in the middle of the card here allows sort of like a case for it to be, a little bit of maybe a relief from the sort of like a intense stuff we're seeing, and like a bit more of a comedic, entertaining sort of matchup. And I think I did that in spades here. You got Ethan Page, who's doing some absolutely fine, tremendous work recently. So he's been killing it on all cylinders there. Mr. Iguana, who is just literally Mr. Entertaining as far as I'm concerned. He just puts a smile on my face every time I see him. And these two just really sort of vibe off with each other. They just got such a great blend. The chemistry is, just firing off. It's just a really nice, fun matchup here. Is it a spectacular contest? No, it's not, but it's a good, fun, entertaining match. I think that's the best way to look at it here. There was some really great character work from Ethan Page, especially. And yeah, just Mr. Iguana's likability was just fully on show here, and the crowd were loving it. They were having a great time. And it felt like a feel good match to watch. It's an expected result with Ethan Page getting the victory here in the end. There's no shocks there, absolutely whatever. But it was just a good match overall, and like I said, entertaining for sure. I thought both men are able to react to each other on so many occasions. They sort of just bounce off of one another. It's quite nice. It was perhaps a little sloppy in parts as well, maybe, but you do sort of get that from the high energy, high risk, offense that Mr. Iguana does bring. So I guess, you sort of have a bit of a trade-off there. It has to be absolutely perfect for it to not look even a little bit sloppy. But in the end, we do see Ethan Page capitalizing on Mr. Iguana, and he sort of flips him off of the top rope over onto the canvas, and then he hits a twisted grin in order to get the victory here and retain his North American Championship. But yeah, this like I say, it's just a fun, good match. It wasn't anything spectacular or crazy or special, but I think it served for a nice purpose where it was in the card. A little bit of a slight relief, and just change in tempo for what we've been seeing up until this point, and what we will see, coming up afterwards and throughout the rest of the night. I gave it a 7.5 out of 10. Like I say, I think it did what it needed to do. So decent enough. But obviously it's not going to get those extremely high ratings, and there's no reason for it to get really lower ratings in my perspective. So yeah, we've been on par with each other so far here, Nick. What did you make of this one? And what did you make of a slightly more comedic relief here from this one compared to what we've seen just so far and throughout the rest of the night?
Yeah, and it was just that, as you kind of alluded to, and that was kind of the silver lining I had for it was no, it didn't meet my expectations that I had, just simply because the two guys in the ring, it just seemed like they really don't miss in terms of both an entertainment standpoint and just an in ring aspect. But yeah, a more gimmicky match. Yeah, definitely took full stage, center stage here, and just kind of yeah, wasn't quite living up to what I had kind of hoped for it. But yeah, it was entertaining, and it did, don't take that away from it. Just wasn't the technical standpoint that I thought it could and maybe should have been. But as you alluded to, kind of where it was placed in the card, kind of coupled with the next one as well. Definitely kind of taking a break from the high intensity that were the first two in the last match. So yeah, with all that, it was still a great match, and the intensity and the gear unmatched currently by Ethan Page. Sitting here playing along with Mr. Iguana until he's not. Decides he's fed up with it and just flips that switch like very few in WWE can do right now. He's able to do both the comedic aspect and the serious aspect, which including the in-ring grabs. So continued props for Ethan Page per usual. The push is a big, avid supporter and a big fan. But yeah, Mr. Iguana holding his own here as well. More so from the entertainment aspect, but obviously can go in the ring as well. I'm curious to see if they'll have any fallouts from this. Obviously, the absolute disrespect to Layeska here was absolutely noted, and I can't imagine Mr. Iguana just going to let that one go. So we'll see if there's a further falling out from here. Maybe a more serious bout next time. Who knows? I did give this one a 7 out of 10, so just a notch below yours. But with that, let's go ahead and get into the next match, which is the Cullings Izzi Dame going up against Tatum Paxley. Obviously, this is the fallout from Izzi turning on Tatum, costing her NXT title. So a very interesting look here for Tatum as she comes down to the ring looking like she's kind of spent the entire night crying with that mascara running down her face. But KP, this one had a different feel to it. Curious to get your thoughts on what you made of it all, and of course your overall rating for this one.
Yeah, this one always caught my attention to be quite an interesting matchup. I felt like there was a very big possibility here that we sort of do see a lot of the good work from Izzi Dame recently be sort of, well, not put to waste, but maybe sort of like pushed back a little bit where it shouldn't have been. And thankfully they didn't go down that route, which is quite nice. I thought it was a decent match, lots of storytelling here, and the storytelling was the absolute epicenter of this whole contest, really. There was just so many sort of, calls to, the past relationship between these two ladies, sort of the current dynamic and, how things have changed. Those inner sort of demons, from Tatum Paxley trying to sort of like fight, Angel and devil over her shoulder sort of thing. Izzy just standing right in front of her and basically trying to talk. I say talk sense into her. No, she's sort of trying to talk nonsense after what she's done to Tatum so far. But just trying to take advantage of that mentality that Tatum Paxley does have, that personality trait that is very, very trusting and just wants friendship. And that worked in spades for this contest. It slowed the pace down on so many occasions for Izzy when Tatum was taking advantage. And Izzy Dane would sort of use her sort of weak sort of point in the matchup to basically just try and stop Tatum from just inflicting too much punishment on her. And that happened several times throughout the contest. Thanks to these interactions, things were picked up by Izzy Dame, basically straight afterwards, and usually pretty quickly, they get back into the pace they'd already they had previously before those moments, which was quite nice. At least they didn't sort of suffer too much from that sort of disruption of pace because of the slight storytelling here and there. But yeah, we do see a point in the contest eventually where Tatum actually hits a cemetery drive onto Paxley on the announce table. This is after Izzy had tried begging her not to do it, but Tatum actually did sort of fall through with it on this occasion, which is quite nice. She rolls Izzy into the ring, but Sean Spears, who's on the outside with Nico Vance, Spears brings out the Tatum and Izzy dolls, which have been a large part of the recent history with Tatum Paxley. He gives them both to Tatum before he then rips the head off of the Tatum Paxley one. Tatum slaps Spears after a couple of moments to sort of recognize what has happened, and then when Izzy gets Tatum back into the ring, she manages to hit a big boot and then the eye drive in order to get the victory for Dame. So yeah, I mean, it wasn't like an all-time classic match or anything, but in terms of what it did by telling a story, just sort of highlighting everything that these two women have gone to up until this point, I think it did really well in that department as well. I think maybe it was a bit too much, you could argue. There were a lot of these interactions. Maybe that's my own slight critique there, but besides that, I thought it was pretty decent. Like I said, nothing too crazy or special, but it was good. And yeah, I don't think we're done here by any means necessary. Izzy getting the win is so important for her. Doesn't derail any of her momentum. It's perfect to keep her sort of moving on here. And I don't think Paxley is going to obviously take that one and lie down with it. I think we'll get a little bit of a repeat from this one going forward, and that'll be a chance for Tatum to maybe get some of that momentum back afterwards. So yeah, no harm, no foul on this one for me. I think this is a great decision, and happy with the result as well in that sense. I gave it a 7 out of 10. Like I say, it just wasn't quite, to the standards of some of the other matches on the card, but it was still pretty decent enough. What did you make of this one, Nick, in terms of, the whole interactions between the two ladies, the distraction sort of causing the finish there, and just generally the result as well? Izzy Dame, I know you're wanting Izzy to win. How happy are you that she got it?
Yeah, the cooling really coming into play here between Izzy and Sean Spears, playing on the emotional kind of toll of Tatum. I felt like maybe that was maybe a bit overdone. They did it to begin the match, and then not that long after, Izzy did it again, and Tatum, kind of fell for it again. Like, you don't just because she's a babyface doesn't mean she has to be kind of booked to be, stupid. So I felt like that was kind of done a bit much, but that is, and they capitalized that on that once again with Sean Spears showing the dolls and then ripping the head off the doll. I thought that was, yeah, that was a moment for sure. But yeah, absolutely the right call having Izzy win here, as we both alluded to on the predictions video, to make this, to make this heel turn effective, you have to, come out of the gates firing, and she did just that. Taking advantage of that kind of distraction from Sean Spears, hitting Tatum with that big boot and getting the win. So I think again, it does make the heel turn feel effective, but I think in terms of this match, I just felt like it was a bit too slow and a bit too gimmicky for my taste. So I give this one a 6 out of 10. I think Izzy has potential. I think she does still have some improvements to make in ring, but I think we'll continue to see that throughout the story. Maybe next time just a little less on the gimmick, because we've already kind of got through that. We've got through the heel turn and all that. And this was, I think, the reason they did this was just because after the heel turn from Izzy on Tatum, we didn't really see anything of it, up until this match. So this was kind of them trying to mend that gap, if you will. But I think they could have done that in other ways outside of this match. So I think next time probably just have the match just be the match. Maybe a distraction, but there was just too much gimmicky stuff here for me. But with that, let's go ahead and get into the main event, which is the Men's Iron Survivor Challenge, of course, featuring Leon Slater, Jevonevans, Myles, Borne, Dion, Lennox, and Joe Hendry. KP, comparatively speaking, where does this deadline line up for you? It's in terms of the other years, and also more, more recently, comparatively speaking, to the women's. And do you feel like the right person won here? And what are your thoughts on all other four men that didn't quite have what it takes to get that win tonight?
Yeah, so much to go through in this one, and I'll try and be as fast as I pretty much can with this. Yeah, it was a pretty solid Iron Survivor matchup. Do I think it was as good as the women's match from earlier on? Not quite, but it was still very entertaining, in that sense. Yeah, I think it was a very competitive matchup. It was very strategic as well. I thought there was a big sense of strategy going into this one, which there is normally a lot of that in these Iron Survivor matches, but I thought this one especially sort of allowed that to sort of, I don't know, take center stage for the majority of it, which is quite nice. The final couple of minutes were exceptional. Included some lovely sequences from most of the men of the contest. I think actually everybody was involved in those sequences. And yeah, every man, like the women's one, had their say in the match, and the flow was just really, really nice. It was just generally just really well worked. We'll go into how it did work out in the end. So let's run that through like I did earlier with the women's one. So we do see Jevonevans and Leon Slater start up the matchup, and we see Jevon pin Slater with a Hurricanrana pin combination, kind of like in the women's match, literally just before the third competitor's coming down to the ring. And we would see Myles Borne, who would solidify his advantage for this position on NXT this past week by winning on behalf of his team against Dark State, and he would pick number 3 to enter in this contest. So yeah, choosing that as his lucky spot there. So once Myles Borne enters, we don't really have too much going on in terms of pinfalls in the time for the next entrant to come on down. But there's a nice little few minutes where they're sort of like going back and forth. Myles Borne's hitting the skies, he's looking pretty impressive, and he's hanging with the two absolutely crazy agile guys in Jevon and Leon. So it's quite impressive there, really. But yeah, he looked pretty good. We then see Dion Lennox come in at number 4, and Dion Lennox pins Jevonevans with a sort of like a driver type maneuver after a doomsday device just occurred literally seconds prior to this. It was quite a nice sort of few moments there. We see Joe Hendry come in at number 5, the last man to enter. And he pins Myles Borne with a fireman's carry slam type maneuver. So that'll get him on the board as well. We then see moments later Slater pinning Joe Hendry after hitting a Swanton 450, which is absolutely beautiful. Every time I see it, I love the move. We then see Borne hit the Borne again on Slater, and that would see him get a pin, which would then tie things up with every single man in the contest having one fall each at this point. Jevonevans, he is sort of like in the shark cage here at this point. Towards the very end of the matchup, he's sort of been locked in there, and he can't really get out or whatever. He eventually gets up onto the top of it and just dives off the top, and he gets back into the ring, and he ends up rolling up Myles Borne after sort of like Joe Hendry and all the taking themselves out of the contest, like towards the outside of the ring. And yeah, Jevonevans would roll up Myles Borne, and that would see him get his second pinfall and the final pin of the matchup. So Jevonevans wins this one. Just sort of like in the last few seconds of the contest, very similar to that of the women's match with kendalgrey getting the job done in similar style. But yeah, it was a great moment for Jevonevans, and just generally speaking, just those last few minutes were truly exceptional. They were very, very fun to watch, and just the way the sequences all went together, it was just really, really great to see. We don't get the end of Deadline just like that though, because we obviously see Obafemi. He would come on down, and I say come on down. He'd come out to the entrance way, and he would sort of like stare down Jevonevans, seeing his first official challenger since picking up the NXT title once again. And that match could be taking place at New Year's Eve, so in a matter of a few weeks on NXT. And as we sort of had that little stare down between the two of them, we then get a return of Tony D'Angelo once the lights go out and they come back on. The spotlight's all on him. Sort of like a little bit of a different look, Tony D'Angelo. Definitely a thicker beard from last time. Doesn't seem to have the sort of same gimmick that we all know and are aware of, him having in the past. But yeah, seems like maybe a little bit of a different feel for Tony D'Angelo on this one. But he takes down Jevonevans pretty, swiftly and easily. And then we do see a very almost confused, possibly bemused Obafemi on the entranceway, sort of looking down, just acknowledging what just happened between the two men. So yeah, that'll be the end of Deadline. In terms of our Iron Survivor Challenge match here for the guys, yeah, like I said, it wasn't quite as good as the women's match, but it was pretty good and pretty solid regardless of the fact. Especially those last few minutes, like I've said a couple of occasions already. I gave it an 8.5 out of 10. Happy for Jevonevans for getting the victory here. Loving that for him. Not an overly shocking result for seeing Jevonevans win, but I think it's just a great decision because I think at some point, he's had his cases in the past where he's come up short on the NXT Championship. Maybe this time it really is the moment for him. So ecstatic for that. Looking forward to seeing if he gets the job done finally. And see what the young OG can do from here on out. Nick, what did you make of our main event for Deadline? How did you rate Jevonevans winning? What about that return from Tony D'Angelo at the end of the bell? And just generally speaking, everything that happened. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, I would agree with you. I don't think the men's match quite lived up to the women's. I gave the women's a 9. I gave the men's an 8. So not crazy difference, but just felt like it was a much more entertaining contest. Was that the women's? Not to say the men's wasn't entertaining. Obviously, the script was a little similar in that they coming down to the final wire, all men tied at 1, and Jevonevans kind of getting the roll up. But there at the end, I had honestly no idea because every single man kind of felt like he was going to had a chance there at the end, with Javon getting the win and to get that over Myles Borne. And I don't think either of us really thought, I'm sure we thought Javon could win, just didn't think he would, because at least for me, it felt like he had just kind of been there not that long ago. But of course, now with Femi, being at the reign once again, I think maybe as you kind of alluded to, that maybe this is finally Jevonevans' time. So maybe this reign won't be super long for Obafemi. Maybe he'll drop that to Javon at New Year's Evil and then head on to the main roster. So I guess we'll see. It just feels like when we get this idea in our head that someone belongs on the main roster, we hit it probably more, as much as possible, maybe more than we should at times. But regardless, yeah, I thought this was a good contest. It's similar to the women. I don't really think anyone really stood out here. I think everyone kind of just held their own. Everyone looked the part. Javon climbing over the penalty box, I thought that was a cool spot. But everyone definitely had their spots, and overall, I don't really feel like anyone came out super stronger than comparatively speaking. But obviously Jevonevans getting the win, I think is a good call as long as they do the right thing with it. If he goes and loses to Oba once again, and then I kind of feel like I'll look back on this and kind of be like, what was the point? So, but with all that, yeah, Tony D'Angelo returning. Haven't seen him since July. Crazy how fast time flies. But yeah, he definitely looks a little more intense. Curious to see kind of what his character will be going forward. But yeah, entertaining final match here, main event, if you will. I will stick to my guns. I think the women should have main evented, but is what we got. With that, KP Deadline, NXT Deadline in the books. Give us your overall rating and your favorite match of the night, maybe a key highlight for the night as well, and we'll get this one wrapped up.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, absolutely solid show. Just generally speaking, no real bad matches across the course of the card. Yeah, maybe a couple weren't quite as good as some of them, but there wasn't really a bad matchup in my perspective. But yeah, just a lot really going on. 2 really solid Deadline matches. Iron Survivor Challenge matches, I should say. And we do see 2 number 1 contenders in Kendalgrey and Jevonevans. Those 2 matches are my highlights of the night, just for how just enjoyable they were to watch. There's a reason I love these matches, and I think that the women's match especially just sort of encapsulated why I like them as much as I do. And the men's one was just maybe just a little short of that, but followed in the similar footsteps. So yeah, in my opinion, both hit really nicely. And the Obafemi and Ricky Saints matchup, still scratching my head about that one now, but I do quite like a shocking result. So for me personally, I'm quite keen for that. And seeing where this is going to go, obviously I'm very interested. Will Jevonevans, finally get the job done? He's got a lot of history with Obafemi. We'll see. But I'm very interested for sure. I'm really excited to see how that one does play out. But yeah, solid night. Really enjoyed it. An average of my matches all put together comes out as an 8 out of 10, which I think is pretty fair because, it's quite a solid show for the majority, in my opinion. And we do see quite a lot of good things and positive things throughout the course of the night. We do get a returning Tony D'Angelo, which I think is very much needed. I think I was actually talking to yourself, Nick, a few weeks ago, or maybe last week, about, just not having very many heel male superstars on NXT. And I think that, with the returning Tony D'Angelo with this new gimmick sort of thing that you could be having, I think this could be absolutely perfect. This could be a great addition, and a very welcome return to NXT for sure. So yeah, lots of positives for me. Really, really happy with that. We'll see how things go coming out after this deadline. But what did you make of it? General reaction to the show, rating, and your highlights and everything that went into it. What did you make of it?
Yeah, good point on the men's side. Yeah, obviously, we've alluded to the fact that the men's main event scene is kind of lacking, but I think it's a great addition to have Tony D'Angelo there, especially on the heel side, as you have hit on before as well. But yeah, overall, I would say this is probably my favorite deadline that I've watched, which is comparatively speaking, just felt like everything was a little, obviously we have the surprise winners that helps, but I think just in general, where the matches were, I think felt less predictable to me. I think that was my biggest complaint about past deadlines was, in particular, those Iron Survivor matches. It felt like they were a bit predictable. Granted, you had similar scripts, but the ending, you didn't really know who was going to win. I think that definitely helps play a part, makes it a little more interesting in my eyes. But with that, my highlight of the night, obviously, being that women's Iron Survivor matchup, and of course Kendal Grey winning. I think we're both pretty elated for that, and excited to see what she can do against JCJ and New Year's Evil. And then, of course, on the other side of that same coin, having Jevonevans get another crack at Obafemi. Who, in our eyes, I think should already be on main roster. So we'll have to wait and see where that goes, and we'll have to wait and see what Tony D'Angelo will be able to do on the men's side. But with that, my overall rating is a 7.5, so just a notch below yours. That third and fourth match not quite living up to the expectations that I kind of had for it. But as you alluded to as well, not every single match needs to be top notch. You have to have some breaks in there at some point to give the audience a rest as well. But with that deadline reaction video in the books, what did you all think of Deadline? Let us know in the comments below. Highlights for you, bad decisions possibly, and what do you think we'll do with these winners going forward from those Iron Survivor matchups? Of course, we'll be back shortly with our Raw, NXT, and SmackDown recaps per usual. Also, continue working on our WrestleMania videos, as well as Saturday Night Main Event. John Cena's last match coming up this Saturday. We'll have all you need to know on that in terms of predictions and reactions. Let you know how we're feeling and what should be a very sentimental week. So, looking forward to all that. Lots going on here at the Push this week. But until next time, this has been the Push with Nick and KP. We'll see you soon. Take care.